I have to ask you, this is a tricky one because the federal education department has an ancillary role in the decisions made in schools, which tend to be state and local responsibilities. But you have guidance that you can offer and clarity that you can provide. And already we've got confusion between the CDC and the American physicians about something as basic as masks. Here in New York City, I saw somebody circulating a campaign, unmask our kids. So the basic matter of masks and children going back to schools is not yet resolved.
Oh, thanks for having me on. And one thing we can agree on is that our students deserve to be in the classroom every day, all day in the fall. And I know that we're gearing up for back to school, and the question of masks has come up. So, to me, we want our students in school. So requiring masks or having masks in our schools is just another mitigation strategy to get our students safely back into schools. As you said earlier, our school officials and our health officials should be working together to make sure policies are put in place that get students in school. This isn't only about reducing transmission, while that's the primary goal. It's also about building confidence and sending children back to school.
Right, so this hasn't, what role can you have? I just don't want to have a re-go of last summer, right, where everybody was saying something different to everybody else. Where do you stand, and what will your department do to sort of say, hey, we'll deal with some of the ventilation, big issue, serious issue in a lot of schools, water and ventilation, but this is how schools should look. Are you in any position to offer that guidance or provide some baseline rules about schools?
Well, definitely. I mean, we know we want our schools to be safe environments for our students and our staff. And we know what works. We have a year's worth of experience under our belts, a year's worth of science. And, in my experience reopening schools in Connecticut, we know what works. We know that when you layer on the mitigation strategies, you can have children going to school daily without spread. And that's what we're expecting. We want our students in school. We want the mitigation strategies followed. And we want to make sure that the decisions are being left to the educators and the health experts who know their communities best.
So we're looking at 9 states, according to the Sun Sentinel here: Arkansas, Arizona, Georgia, Iowa, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, and Vermont, all having passed legislation prohibiting school districts from enacting mask mandates. On the other hand, at least six states, Connecticut, Hawaii, New Mexico, New York, Virginia, and Washington will require masks for K-2 students. Who decides this, or does everybody just decide this on their own?
What I'm noticing that's a little bit different from last year is that this has become a little bit too politicized. Last year, we found success when we allowed our school leaders and our health experts to make decisions, communicate with parents, build confidence, and safely reopen our schools. I think the more it becomes political, the more challenging it's going to be for our educational leaders who have worked extremely hard to safely reopen schools, and for our educators who want to see their students in the classrooms. So let the decisions be on the shoulders of the educators and the health officials that did it last year, and they're prepared to do it again this year.
All right, let's talk about ventilation. You've actually got some money for that in the Relief Act. How is that being deployed? And give us some examples of the kinds of things that how it's identified as a problem and what gets done about it.
Thank you, Ali. So last year we heard from parents, from educators that ventilation was a concern. We know the American Rescue Plan, $122 billion, as you mentioned, is out there, and it could be used to address some of those safety needs around ventilation and air quality. Tomorrow, I'll be in Atlanta visiting a school that used the American Rescue Plan funds to improve ventilation system and air quality and build confidence in the community. But we also know that, ventilation is a part of a bigger infrastructure issue. And the American Rescue Plan can be used to improve ventilation systems. But I visited schools as old as 130, 140 years old, like in Philadelphia. And the idea of rebuilding our schools and making sure that we are taking care of our infrastructure, our school infrastructure needs, is critically important. In the Build Back Better agenda, $100 billion towards school infrastructure is critical to make sure that all students across the country have access to a high-quality learning environment so they can thrive. And that's what we're also talking about. Short-term ventilation issues and air quality issues, the American Rescue Plan is helping with that. But infrastructure for our schools is a long-term issue.
What other infrastructure in our school issues can that money go toward? I know you've identified ventilation, which may not have been the top of everybody's list, except that we've had this pandemic. But what else? Once you get past ventilation, what are the big issues that schools need in terms of fixing?
You know, I visited schools that were so old that the windows were painted shut. I saw schools with poor airflow. I saw schools that closets were being used as workspaces. You know, we're retrofitting a little bit too much, and we're putting students in schools that are very old. If we want to prepare our students for the workforce needs of tomorrow, we need to have labs in our schools where students can learn hands-on, state-of-the-art facilities where they can get the highest levels of learning to be successful in life. And unfortunately, in my visits, I visited 16 states over the last 3 months. I saw schools that were top-notch and brand new, and then I saw schools that I wouldn't want to send my own children in. So we have to do better. We have to make sure that we look at infrastructure as equity also for our students.